VC funding sounds super sexy, and it can help give you a big boost and obviously publicity and attract talent and all those things, but it's not for everybody, and it can kill a perfectly profitable, healthy business.
All right, welcome to episode 24 of Lessons via Leaders, where we bring you a new entrepreneur, thought leader, investor each and every week. This week, I'm really excited because we have Paula González from 500 Startups. She's the head of managed funds. 500 Startups is a Silicon Valley-based early-stage tech VC fund whose mission is to discover and back the world's most talented entrepreneurs, help them create successful companies at scale, and build thriving global ecosystems. At 500 Startups, Anna leads the efforts to raise dedicated investment vehicles to complete corporate and ecosystem development programs around the world. Anna, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Will. Very excited to share some time with you.
Yeah, likewise. We got a lot to talk about, but first off, can you give our listeners a quick background on you and how you got started and involved in the tech space?
Yes, absolutely. It was very serendipitously. I have always strived to have my career have some sort of a positive impact in the social and economic spaces, and I wasn't sure how. I started in management consulting, as one does, because it's like the best job you can get out of school, mostly in the private equity space. And I really like the practice of investing. And I mean, it's growth stage businesses that are a whole different ballpark than startups, but I really like this practice of mobilizing capital to help businesses grow and create more opportunities. I went on to business school and then went back to Mexico, where I'm originally from, to work in impact investing, which I found to be like a very interesting crossroads that I wanted to explore given my experience in private equity. I said, okay, how does it work if we mobilize capital for impact? And so I spent 4 years helping build out the impact investment field in LATAM, and from the fund investing piece as well as accelerators. And then I wrote an article about this. Life brought me serendipitously to Miami 4 years ago for a personal choice. And I found myself having to start from scratch in a city and in a country. And I was very lucky to meet Beji Yang, who's the managing partner at 500, who had been looking at Miami for a while, running one-off pop-up accelerator programs. And she was like, and I'm super bullish on Miami. I think that there's a great opportunity to build out a hub to connect LATAM and Europe with Silicon Valley and the US market, and to help build out the ecosystem here. I'm looking for like the right person to launch this. Are you interested? So I thought, oh, this is super interesting. Now I'm adding to the capital and the impact piece, because ecosystem building and helping underrepresented founders is a big thing for 500. I get to add the technology piece, which was new for me. So, and I felt very passionate about helping build out Miami as a city. So 4 years ago, that's where I ended, and I launched the operation that we have in Miami. And then about a year into it, I hired a local team that took on the operations, a really good team to continue with the mission. And I joined my boss, Beji, to replicate this model in other cities around the world for 500. So how do we take the program that we typically run in San Francisco and Mexico City only at that point, in different markets, in partnership with corporates and governments, to pursue economic development by supporting startups and supporting corporate innovation objectives by connecting corporates to startups. So helped build out that global ecosystem development team, which was very exciting, and did work in Europe, the Middle East, and Southeast Asia, and Africa just recently. So that was a great experience. And now at 500, it feels like every 6 months it's a new role, it's a new job, and there's a lot of interesting things going on. And I have just started a new role, which is help raise dedicated investment vehicles around the world that are going to be at early stage with specific mandates that have interest from our partners, our government and our corporate partners, but helping deploy more capital to these nascent ecosystems around the world. And this includes still Miami, of course. So I know that you wanted us to talk about this, and I'm excited to touch upon it. But all the things are happening right now in Miami. We feel very excited and bullish and want to continue building on it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, at 500 Startups, when I I mean, I'm born and raised here in Miami, but I really got into tech and started my company Live Ninja in 2012. And at that time, this was kind of right at the beginning of when Miami tech was kind of building its foundation. And I remember 500 Startups was pretty active here at the time, and they did the whole Geeks on a Plane thing, right? Where they
That's
took a
right.
bunch of folks from Miami and they brought them to Latin America to see different startup ecosystems there. So I got to give props to 500 Startups that, when they talk about people that were building a lot of the foundational work, 500 Startups definitely, said, hey, there is a future here in Miami. We're really bullish on the ecosystem. Do you like, I wasn't on the plane. I wasn't a geek on the plane, but what insights do you have before we get into all the cool stuff that's happening in Miami? What insights did Betty and Dave and all those folks have about Miami at that early point that kind of then transferred into your role in building on that momentum?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's a couple of things. First, Miami is already a hub for Latin American business. It
Yep.
hasn't typically been for startups, but it has been for the corporate world for a long time. And for many families, it's wealthy families in Latin America, it's common to have a second home in Miami, and Miami
Yep.
is a city where they feel very comfortable in. And honestly, I've lived in New York. I've traveled around the U.S. extensively, and I'm Mexican, as I mentioned. There's no city in the U.S. where I felt as welcomed as I do in Miami for speaking Spanish, and like you don't feel discriminated or I mean it's
No, I actually I get
an
more
advantage to
discriminated.
speak
I
Spanish.
get
Yes.
I get more discriminated by being a gringo than you probably do.
100%, 100%.
So
So this ties with LATAM and Miami were very evident
yeah,
in many ways. They were just not so for the startup world. And then it's obviously Miami's airport is very well connected, and it's a very easy flight to San Francisco and also to Sao Paulo and also to Madrid or Paris. So just foreseeing that the geographic position, the current diversity of talent had the potential to make Miami one of those. And then the quality of life is great. So all of these things had the potential to make Miami a truly global hub, like only few cities in the world can, like Singapore, maybe Hong Kong. The vision was Miami could be one of these global hubs, and we want to be a part of building it out, and we want to make it a key operation for ourselves to continue to grow.
I love that. I love that. And I think it ties into not just what's happening in Miami, but what's happening around the world. Obviously, we've been experiencing this shift after the pandemic, in this post-COVID world. Folks are going to be working remotely more. You have companies like Facebook and Google and all the big real tech leaders saying you can work from wherever you want now. They basically say you don't have to be in California, in Menlo Park, or in Palo Alto, and things like that. And that methodology or that mindset is, obviously being contagious to lots of companies. If you want to be competitive in the tech space for talent, you're going to have to offer similar flexibilities and similar perks. Now, I'm curious in your thoughts about Miami. Is this also this whole thing? It's clearly benefiting Miami because of like the things you said, increased quality of life, cost of living is better than in San Francisco and New York and things like that. Of course, we have amazing weather, no state income tax and stuff like that. But I saw an article the other day that I think the title of the article was "The Rise of Everywhere." Right. And I think your role at 500 plays a lot into that because you're operating on a global basis and you're focused on regions all over the world. Do you have that same approach where you feel like the benefits that Miami is experiencing now, other regions are going to have similar benefits because now people can, live where they want to live, not live where they have to live?
100%. And that premise that you mentioned, people can choose where they can live independently of where they work, is coming true at the speed of light, which
Yep.
was a trend before COVID, but now it's just a reality. And I think people realize that living in Miami has great advantages that you already mentioned. And I think that there was kind of a penalty before for being based in Miami, and people would think, oh, you're not hungry or competitive enough, like you're ready to retire, and if you're living in Miami. And now they're just realizing you can build a great company from anywhere. And I think this definitely is creating a lot of opportunities in other regions. There's data that we have followed closely. Unicorns, I think 8 years ago, the majority of them were built out of the US, and now I think maybe 60 or 70% of the unicorns are being built outside of the US. So we see Middle East is growing tremendously. Southeast Asia is growing tremendously. Africa, it's just like starting as well to grow. So many interesting things going on there. But I also think that it's getting more interconnected. So companies today have less an attachment to a specific location, and this is just going to continue moving forward, because you might have your sales team in a geography where your market is, for example, in the US, and you might have engineers in Latin America or in Poland, and you might be looking to expand also in Southeast Asia. So I think the mobility of capital and talent, even inside the same companies, it's just being more global. So I think there's going to be less emphasis on where are you located, and more what access to what networks do you have so you can build what you want to build.
Right, exactly. I think everybody's, taking this GeoAgnostic approach these days. And 500 was a pioneer in that sense. I think 500 back in the early, 2010s, they said, we'll invest anywhere globally, where a lot of VCs were saying you need to be in the Bay Area, you need to be in New York. So I think 500 was way ahead of that trend, and now you just see it accelerating. I think we were going that way anyways, but obviously COVID hit the fast forward button on everything, right? And now we're in this phase where, people can work from anywhere and be productive from anywhere, and VCs, to stay competitive, are going to have to invest everywhere. They're not going to be able to stay in San Francisco and in New York. All right, so
yeah, that's
go ahead.
Oh, no,
please.
No, sorry, I was just gonna add that that's something that I love about 500. It has always been making bets in places and in people that have been typically overlooked. So we were the first Silicon Valley investor in Latin America. We were the first Silicon Valley investor in Southeast Asia, the first one in the Middle East, and in many countries, we were the first institutional investor at all. So that really speaks to a commitment to help create more opportunities, and obviously for us as well as a fund, because I do think that creates goodwill with the founders with these different geographies to help find good investment opportunities. So yeah,
100%.
Yeah,
100%.
yeah,
And how many, and 500 startups has operations in how many countries now?
So we have, well, I don't know in COVID, because people moved around a lot in COVID.
Of course. The great reshuffling.
Before COVID, we had teams sitting in 20 countries, and we had made investments in 78 countries around the world.
Yeah.
That's
awesome.
And we are looking to we continuously work to connect the different hubs and locations that we have. So for founders, for investors, what we're trying to do is this new, like the Silk Road that connected the East with the West, to exchange all the species and the materials that people needed at that point. So how can we be that digital, like super highway to connect and continue to foster this mobility that I was talking about of talent and capital and access to market?
I love that. I want to also bring it back to Miami a little bit, and I'm curious, like Miami is like the talk of the Twitter sphere these days, right? I mean, as far as the tech industry goes, it's just like kind of Miami's been at the top. Obviously, Keith Raboy, Peter Thiel, they just bought houses here. A lot of people are moving here. A lot of people come to check it out. Mayor Suarez is like a celebrity at this point, right? I'm curious, from like in the 500 startup Slack channel, for example, is everybody hitting you up like, Anna, like you're holding it down in Miami, right? Like kind of the eyes are on you now, right? Is everybody hitting you up? Is that kind of like the vibe you're getting from everybody else?
Yeah, they're all sending me like, hey, Keith just moved. Hey, there's this chat on Clubhouse with the mayor. Are you on it? Hey, look at this. Look at, and they're like, yeah, I'm on it.
I love that. It's hard to keep up with all the stuff that's going on. It's something new every day, right?
Yeah, I'm like honestly even like 500 global. It was sort of like, what are we doing in Miami? But it's
Yeah.
always been this way. When we entered Mexico,
Yes.
it was like, what are you doing in Mexico? And I was like, oh, it's so obvious. We like it makes a lot of sense to be in Mexico, right? So it was like, what are we doing in Miami? And now everybody's tweeting like, yeah, 500 has been in Miami, like 500 staff from around the world. Yeah, we have been like big believers in Miami from the beginning.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, you were from the get-go for sure. So I
Yeah.
want to get your personal thoughts on all this excitement and momentum that's happening in Miami tech. Obviously, this is great. A rising tide lifts all ships. So a lot of benefits and things are happening. But again, Miami's always been a very transient city. People come through all the time. People leave. A lot of people have winter homes here. Um, a lot of people say they live in Miami, but they're not involved in the community as much. What's your take on all this excitement and momentum? Do you feel that these folks that are saying, "Hey, I'm in Miami now," they're here for the long run, or do you think this is something that it's going to be for the next year or two? They'll feel it out once things go back to normal. People will go back to San Francisco, New York, and these more urban, dense cities. And where do you think Miami can go from here with this exciting foundation that we have right now at this moment?
That's a great question. I think whatever Miami is going to become is in the making right now. And I think it is a lot of definitely fake it till you make it. And I know that there's been a lot of grassroots organizations from starting 10 years ago trying to like bring talent, bring capital to Miami. And now it's the moment that serendipitously it's all happening. Obviously,
Yep.
the mayor is doing a great work. The coverage in Wall Street Journal of Keith Rabois and other people coming has been like very influential, but I do think it's genuinely attracting people to Miami. And whether they think I'm here for a week or for a year, the fact that they're coming here and they're opening themselves to that opportunity, I think a lot of great things can come out of it. So I don't really care if they're saying I'm here just for a month, because I think that at least a portion of those will come and will fall in love with what's happening. Like myself, I never expected I would stay long in Miami. And I know a lot of people that say, I was here just like as a tourist and I decided to stay. So there is a positive feedback loop effect that is in motion right now. And I do think it has the potential to become something very real of substance. So I know that a lot of great founders are moving here because obviously they have much lower costs and everything that you talked about. And now they feel that they could access capital from here or from other places because it doesn't matter as much where you're based. Obviously, all the investors we talked about. And I know there's a lot of wheels in motion in the universities, and FIU, to ramp up curriculum and talk to the community and understand what the type of talent that we need to be preparing. And there is, of course, a risk that there's this fear from outsiders that doesn't integrate into the community. Miami has always had like two parallel communities, right? The people that work here on the ground are very integrated, and then a bunch of people who live here, but they're here on the weekends because myself included for the last 2 years, I was on an airplane every week.
Right.
But I think that these worlds are converging now, and I think that there is very interesting potential to become something very interesting for the future. And it's always going to be transient, but New York is transient,
Of
London is
course.
transient,
Exactly.
Paris
Yep.
is transient. So as long as you have a good mix of people that have roots here and that give continuity to what's happening, that also reputations, and it's a place that reputations matter, because I feel in the past
Yeah.
there was not a lot of people that stay here for a long time, so who cared about reputation? And it was a bit like Vegas, like what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, kind of. That was
Yep.
a little bit of the vibe in Miami, but
It's
that's
true.
changing, and that's enough for people to start thinking about, this is a place where I want to have family and I want to do things right. So I think Miami is fulfilling its potential of being this convergence point of talent. Now it's not only Latin and US, it's also Europe, it's also Africa, it's other places where Miami can be this melting pot, and a lot of serendipitous things can happen. And I think what has to happen is Miami as a city and maybe community think about, okay, what really should be our brand based on our strengths and how we want to position ourselves moving forward, so we continue to attract the right kind of people to help us build
Right.
this vision out.
Right. No, I totally agree with that. I think the things like the Miami Tech Manifesto, which I saw was put together, that talks a lot about, diversity and inclusion and equity being core to Miami. I mean, these are things that the community here was really built on, the foundation of our community, and that ethos needs to be carried on into the next wave of whoever comes in needs to embrace that at the same time. So I definitely love that. And I feel like the community is doing a good job being outspoken into what it stands for. I also think, a lot of the things you said 100% are true. Like Miami is transient, but so are all other cities. Like, folks can't say in San Francisco and London and New York that, they're not coming through town every now and then, because folks are. Miami also, you're seeing these founders like, like you said, the Keithra Boys of the world, the Shervins of the world, all these folks that are kind of relocating here, these bigger Silicon Valley investors. Um, it's providing a signal that's saying, hey, this is happening. There's movement happening. I can go check it out. And then they're going to come to Miami, check it out. They're going to take a look at what they could get for $2,000 a month. And they see a view of the bay, and they're not going to believe it. And I think a good percentage of those people are staying. I actually see a lot of that happening on Twitter now, where they're just like, in disbelief at what they can get for certain prices compared to what they can get in the Bay Area. And I think also Miami, again, I'm a born and raised Miami, and so I'm very, very biased. But
You have seen so much. You have seen it grow up so much.
I know it's beautiful. And like, again, when I was growing up in the 80s and the early 90s, it was South Beach. And that was really kind of it. There was Lincoln Road and South Beach. And I understand why it's taken so much time for Miami to shake off this image, because that's really what it was for a while, was this tourist destination. And you mentioned there was kind of like a hedonistic vibe to it. And now you have areas that are culturally rich, like Wynwood, the Design District, and what's happening in Brickell and now in downtown Miami with what Michelle Obbs and Moshe Mana is building, that whole thing. I mean, you're starting to see real uh, culture. You're starting to see history being built here. You're starting to see generations, put their roots down. And Miami has a benefit of being urban dense when you want it to be, and also sprawled out and very vast when you don't want it to be. So in a COVID world, you kind of get the best of both worlds, where you don't get that in San Francisco or in New York.
100%. I couldn't be happier to be living through lockdown in Miami, because there's no better place to spend quarantine.
Right, exactly. You're like, the world's going to hell in a handbasket, but damn, look at that view. It's not so bad out there, right? The world's not so bad. So I can totally relate. It's definitely some benefits to it. Okay, so to shift, the show is called Lessons Via Leaders. So the central theme is kind of talking about lessons learned and things that you picked up throughout your career. I'm curious, as an investor, what are some of your top tips for entrepreneurs who are looking to raise VC funding? I'm sure you get approached all the time by folks that are looking to get plugged in with 500 startups. What are some top tips that you usually give to entrepreneurs when they're about to go make those first few calls to investors?
Yeah, there's a lot of considerations, but some of the key points that I was thinking through was, first, think through if VC is the right type of financing for you, understanding what's your business model, what are your financing needs, and what's the exit outcome that you think you can achieve. Because VC funding sounds super sexy, and it can help give you a big boost and obviously publicity and attract talent and all those things, but it's not for everybody, and it can kill a perfectly
Sure.
profitable, healthy business if because of the high expectations. So I mean, VC investors, depending exactly on what stage they're getting into, are looking to get out around 3 to 5 times their money. So is this something that you want to take on as a company is important. Another thing is, when you go out fundraising, it truly is a full-time job, and it takes a huge toll on, as you were saying, on your mental health as a founder and on the team as well. And it's very distracting. So it's important that you know what you're getting into, and you prepare yourself and you prepare your team as well. For the process, it can last anywhere from 6 to 12 months at least. The next thing is, I think it's very important to build trust with investors, and the best moment to raise money is when you do not need it. So many of the founders that I've seen that have put like really good rounds together, actually they invested time in getting to know the investors way before they needed the money, and they build trust with them, and they keep them updated with posts. And for an investor, it's very helpful to follow the trajectory of a founder and see, oh, this founder in January said they were going to deliver A, B, and C by June, and now it's June and they actually delivered what they said, or even better, they over delivered. So that is super valuable insight that can help make a decision to say, yes, I want to be part of this journey, I believe in you, and I know you, and I know that I can trust you. And then another thing I would say is, when you're considering different funds, and hopefully you have some options to choose from, which I understand it's not always the case, it's also very important to do a due diligence on the investors, because at the end, I will say it's a marriage, right? It's going to be 5-10 years maybe together, and you're getting in bed for good and for bad moments. So it's important that you feel the investor is aligned with what you want to build, and that they have your back. And it's super valid to do your diligence on them and speak to founders that have received investment from them, and even better, founders that have not done well in the portfolio, and see how the investor helped them or did not help them during those difficult times is extremely, extremely valuable.
I think that is like one of the most valuable tips for folks listening. Go to the portfolio page of the VC and find 2 or 3 that didn't work out to the way that everybody thought they would, and get those founders on the phone and ask, how did the investors, conduct themselves during tough times? Because everybody's doing great and everybody's awesome when things are going up and to the right, and things are smooth sailing. But everybody kind of shows their true colors and what kind of partner they are, because that's what investors are. They got to be your partner in this journey. Make sure that they're not causing any additional headaches than you need during what is already a very tough time. For me personally, when I was raising funding, I would always ask myself, A, is this person that I could that has been a founder before? Do they understand the tough times that I've gone through? Do they understand the roles that we're in? Or have they had experience working with a lot of other founders? Because sometimes people, invest like real estate money. They want to get into tech. They made their money in the finance world, but they're dabbling into tech and they don't understand how difficult building a startup can be. And B, can I see myself reaching out to this person when times are really, really tough and sharing everything that's going wrong with the company? And that was kind of the guiding post for me as far as like picking an investor to work with.
Yeah, no, that's super, very, very true.
Yeah, so that's a great tip for sure. I definitely want to check out the portfolios and make sure that you're doing your due diligence. And how about what mistakes do you see founders make a lot when they're going out to raise funding? Sometimes they're coming across that they're a little bit too early, that maybe they're projecting a little bit too far, because I've seen decks, maybe sometimes they say, this is how we're going to exit. We're going to exit by going 100x. And, this is a $1 trillion market. If we can get 2% of the $1 trillion market, then we'll be great. What mistakes and red flags do you personally see that founders can learn from?
I mean, the first thing that you said, I think it's one of the things I was thinking about as well, is it related to, it's important to build trust with the investors. It's very important that you're honest and that you don't bullshit, because that comes through. And the investor knows, and if you're just starting the relationship and they feel that you're not being very transparent with something, that's a huge red flag to like stop that conversation right then and there. Also, trying to overinflate your experience, or using vanity metrics, or like you said, inflating a market in a way that doesn't make sense, it sends a very wrong signal, and it's usually enough for investors to say, you know what, I'm not interested. So that's one thing that's very important. Something else that I would mention is, you have just, I don't know, a couple of minutes, if you're lucky, to capture the investor's imagination and attention. Right. So it's very important that you're as succinct as possible. I would suggest, if it's the first time that you are fundraising, go look at other decks at how, for example, you can visit our YouTube channel at 500. There's all of our demo days are there, and see how the founders are presenting the opportunities, because there is a very special way or distinct way that investors think about businesses. So how do they think about understanding a market? How do they think about traction? What do they care about the team? So understanding what they care about, and like even what are the types of words and metrics that they're interested in. If you start speaking in their same language, it's going to be much easier for them to follow the pitch. Knowing your metrics, it's extremely important. The basic metrics on your business, you need to know them inside out. For me, it's never acceptable that, oh, let me pull up a spreadsheet because I'm not sure how much we grew the last 3 months, month over month. There's a few very basic things: team, traction, metrics, market opportunity, product that we're trying to look for. And a very common mistake, speaking about the product, that I see is founders selling very technically what is the product or the features, rather than what is the opportunity that you're addressing and why is this so interesting. So, the very typical example of the framework that we use, jobs to be done, it's like people are not buying the 4-inch drill, they're buying a hole in the wall, whatever that makes that hole, right? So what is that opportunity that you're looking at? Because I see founders that get very bogged down into their product, and it feels like it's an innovative product, but it's looking for a solution. And that's not a good way to sell an investor on your vision. And I think the last thing that is very important for us at 500, that we often see founders don't do that, is how close are they to their target market. It's a huge I guess failure that we see sometimes.
Like founder market fit versus product market fit, right?
Yes, at 500 we have this thing, and all our mentors work with the founders, always talk to your customer. It's very evident in the first meeting that you have with the founder how much they have truly understood the pain that they are addressing. So demonstrating that sensibility, humility, to say, I am building something for the customers that I have identified, is very important. And that's one of the best recipes of success than having like the perfect product or a very innovative technology that is totally out of tune with the market. So it's a great recipe for success that we're always on the lookout for.
Yeah, there's nothing more impressive than when a founder says, this is we talked to 20 customers and this is exactly the pain point we're solving for them. Like you can identify right away when a founder is in tune with their customer base and that they know the language, what the customer is speaking, versus like market lingo or technical jargon or anything like that. It's almost in very simplistic terms. We talked to Cheryl in Ohio, and she loves our product because we're specifically solving for this, and this is what she said about it. Like, I agree with you that you talk it in the language of your customer versus in the language of the market is always much more impressive. And like you said, also from a deck, you're not looking for a technical analysis. You're looking just to kind of check a few key things and if the founder's thinking about it the right way, right?
Yes, exactly. And what you said, and also like, what is a consumer using today instead of your solution, and why is your solution 10 times better than what they already have today? Like, those are very simple questions that you'd be surprised many founders never go through that exercise, and I think that's very important.
Right. And oftentimes you'll say, who are your competitors? They'll say, we don't have any competitors right now. It's kind of wide open.
So bad.
You're right. Because like, for example, there might not be a competitor, but guess what? Excel is your competitor right now, or a spreadsheet,
Exactly.
Or a Google Doc is your competitor. You can't just say that nothing like this on the market, because most customers don't care. They'll use the free option or the antiquated option because they don't know a better option exists. But it's usually a red flag when you say there are no competitors, right?
There's always a substitute for whatever the job that's to be done, right? I don't know, think about the Starbucks coffee, a typical example as well. A Starbucks coffee can be used as a way to, I don't know, show status. It can be used as a way to pass time while you're waiting for one meeting and the next. It can be used to get a shot of energy. And these are three very different jobs, and each of them have different substitutes that could address the job instead of the coffee, right? So saying that you have no competitors just demonstrates you don't have an understanding of the problem that you're solving for.
100%. Yep, totally agree. How about one particular piece of advice that you've received over the years that has really stuck with you? Like a mentor or somebody said, hey, Anna, this is something that's helped me over the years. Is there anything been like that that's really stuck with you and served you well in your career?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I've been lucky to have great mentors and support me from the get-go. But what came to mind when you asked that question was actually something my dad told me, which was, you just have to keep moving. Life is like a bicycle, and if you stop, you're going to fall. You just have to keep moving. And I think that so many times I for myself, I felt, am I on the right track? I get distracted by shiny objects. I get FOMO. I feel I'm not doing good enough. I feel, all this insecurities. Do I belong here? And as a woman, like all the baggage that comes with that. And I think I try to come back and say, I'm moving forward. At the end, the race is with myself, and I'm a little bit better today than I was yesterday. I'm keeping moving forward, and as long as I'm doing that, that's all that matters, and I'm doing okay.
I love that. You just gotta keep swimming, like in Finding Nemo, right? It's you just gotta keep moving forward. I love that. I love that. Yep. Parents usually give the best advice at the end of the day, right? It's the stuff that sticks with us.
You know
How
what? They
about
give the best and the worst, so it's difficult sometimes to see which one is which.
I'm learning that too. As a parent myself, I'm trying to also the kids come to me with all these random questions, and sometimes I have no idea if I'm giving the right advice or answering them properly. But I think now I have empathy for our parents because we've come with all of these questions. Sometimes they'll hit it, right? Other times, they catch them off the
huge miss.
So I definitely have empathy now that I'm on the other side of the coin. How about one lesson that you've learned personally in your career that you feel has changed your perspective and how you approach work?
Yeah, I think we were talking about this before we started recording, but learning how to pace myself and set the guardrails that I need internally and externally to feel centered, to feel energized and thus motivated and thus productive and creative and being able to add value, right? I have been burnt out so many times by just getting into like the swing of it. You just like throw yourself into something, you don't come out, and you're like, I'll take care of my food or my body or my exercise or whatever later. And it's just not sustainable. So I've had to work a lot to build sustainability into every single day. So I wake up early now and exercise and meditate and try to get into a good space before I kick off my day, and then build like pauses to meditate or just breathe during the day, and like have a hard stop at night and disconnect, because otherwise I have a really bad time sleeping. So like internally being very disciplined to say, whatever I need to do for myself to be okay, that's the most important. And then building my agenda, my team around me in that way, right? Identifying what gives me energy, what drains me from energy, how do I organize the things that I have to do, so I'm not arriving to the end of every single day exhausted, like I just had a 36-hour day every single day.
It's such a great point, and it's so important to remind yourself of that, because we live in a world where, hey, we work on our computers, we work online, it never turns off, ever. There's a constant flow of information. Our inbox is always being filled. The Twitter stream is always refreshed, right? There's that meme that's like, that I want to check my phone, but I'm worried that there's, there might be something new on the internet. Oh yeah, there is something new on the internet. Well, there's always something new on the internet, right? And if you don't allow yourself to turn this off and to give yourself the space you need, it could lead to massive burnout because there's just too much that could demand your attention at any one point. And like you said, like, not all hours are created equal. You could, make the time for meditation, make the time for exercise, make the time for things that fill up your cup, because it's better to have a fulfilled and productive 2 hours versus 6 to 8 hours where you're just feeling burnt out trying to keep up with it all. I find you can get much more meaningful work done in those 2 hours where your cup is filled versus where you're just trying to keep up and stop the fires every now and then. And a lot of entrepreneurs, they don't learn that until much later. They just try to put out every fire they see, and like you said, it's not sustainable.
100%. Yeah.
All right, so with that, we'll wrap up the episode. Before we wrap the episode, we're going to do a quick rapid fire. Again, very quick. I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions. You can answer right away, first thing that comes to your mind. First thing, you hit on this. So you're a morning person or a night person? Sounds like you're a morning
no,
person.
That's interesting. I was a night person. And then I realized I need to do these things at the beginning of my day. And then suddenly I started looking forward to my morning, which I never did. And now I'm starting to be a morning person. So I've been in this transition right now.
I love that. Constantly evolving.
Yeah.
iPhone or Android?
iPhone, always.
Yeah, always. I can't do it. I can't find myself to bring it over to the Android land. How about favorite book you find yourself recommending to founders?
So there's the hard thing about hard things that I like, but then there's another one that I really like, which is Difficult Conversations, which helps, as a founder, you have to have so many difficult conversations every day with clients, investors, talent, employers, it's family, etc. And I found that book very, very helpful. It's nice. By Bruce Patton, Douglas Stone, and Shayla Heen. I had to look it up because I didn't remember the others.
Okay,
there's a couple with the same name.
We'll make sure to leave that link in the description so you could check it out. How about favorite podcasts? What do you find yourself listening to these days?
I don't listen to podcasts a lot. I listen to tons of music. I listen to the news, but I don't listen to podcasts.
Good for you. Again, going back to all this information overload,
I'm trying to build silence into my life these days.
I love that. I got to take a page out of your book for sure. How about favorite local restaurant in Miami? What's your go-to spot?
I love Café Robal, and I'm so sad they closed, it seems, for COVID. So another one I really like is New Kitchen in downtown. It's really good Spanish fusion cuisine.
New Kitchen. All right. We'll make sure to link that one as well. How about favorite city in the world besides Miami?
Besides Miami, I have to say Paris. I lived there for 1.5 years. The first place I lived after my parents. And it's really a huge part of my identity. So love it.
It's a special place. The energy in Paris is like no other.
It recharges, inspires me. Yes.
Agreed. All right. How about favorite part of your job working at 500 to wrap it up?
When I get to talk to founders and they contage me with their boundless energy and ambition and sense that anything and everything is possible.
Oh, I love that. That will wrap it up for today, Anna. But how can folks get in touch with you? You said you want to talk to founders. How can founders reach out? Is it email the best?
Yeah, it's Ana Gonzalez at 500.co.
Okay, awesome. So we'll make sure to leave all of Anna's information in the description of the podcast so you can reach out. And Anna, thank you so much for joining us today. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Will. It's been a pleasure.